Welcome to episode 9 of Real Health Radio.
Welcome to Real Health Radio. Health advice that's more than just about how you look. And here's your host, Chris Sandel.
Hey, and welcome to Real Health Radio. I'm Chris Sandel. Before we get started, I just want to mention a promotion I'm doing at the moment. I'm offering people an option to get a free consult with me to create a health plan. We look at what's going on in your life, how you're eating, what you want to achieve, and what you need to do to get there, and we'll put together a plan for that. And this offer expires on the 2nd of October, so it's only available for about another week or so. To find out about all the details, head over to www.7-health.com/free plan. And I'll put the link in the show notes, and it's my normal website with /free plan. So health at every size is a movement that's growing in popularity. And it was a movement that was largely shoved into the spotlight by Linda Bacon and her book of the same name, Health at Every Size. And the movement had been going on long before her, but her book really gave it much more attention than it had been getting before. And in today's show, I want to look at what Health at Every Size is really about. I'm going to cover why I'm a supporter of a lot of what it teaches and promotes. I'm also going to look at some of the shortcomings or issues with it. From my perspective, there are some, not very many, and it'd be wrong for me not to touch on them and just paint a one-sided picture. And I will add that some of the things I'm going to talk about under the banner of Health at Every Size isn't exclusive to them, that other people and other movements are saying the same thing. But I want to demonstrate as a whole what the movement's about and the issues that they're raising. So Health at Every Size for me is about focusing on healthy habits rather than just focusing on weight, and acknowledging that weight is a really pretty poor indicator for health on its own. Someone's weight isn't totally irrelevant, but its importance is considerably less than most people make out. And often its detractors state that the movement is an enabler of bad health, that it tells everyone that no matter what their size, that they can be healthy. And this actually is not the case. It wants people to focus on health markers and symptoms and their habits to determine whether someone's healthy, not just looking at the number on a scale. And I really agree with this. And the best analogy I can come up with is someone who drops out of college and their parents are really disappointed with them and they say that, you know what, you should stay in college, it's really going to help you. And they kind of counter this by saying, it's fine, Steve Jobs dropped out of college, Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of college, and look at them now. And this kid who's dropped out of college then spends their days smoking weed and playing video games on the couch. And if in their mind this equates them to being Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg because they dropped out of college, then they're delusional. And the same thing if someone is obese and eats fast food, never does any exercise, smokes and drinks heavily, and generally feels pretty terrible. If they see the message that you can be healthy at any size and then decide that what they're doing therefore doesn't matter and that they are going to be healthy, then that's delusional. If this is the takeaway message they get, that everyone is healthy no matter what, then they've gravely missed the point. But I would also add the same thing to someone who is thin. If they're leading an unhealthy lifestyle of poor food choices, smoking, drinking, lack of sleep, lack of exercise, thinking, oh, I'm healthy because I'm thin, is also a recipe for disaster. And what Health at Every Size is about is challenging that notion. So they believe that weight is often correlated with diseases, but it's not the cause. So someone who keeps up unhealthy habits may get high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, and put on weight. What society normally focuses on is that the weight is causing all of these things, that if they lose weight, then it will improve. What Health at Every Size believes is that weight is happening alongside these issues, but it's not the cause of them. Someone could then improve their lifestyle habits, and that improves their cholesterol and their blood pressure and their diabetes, and all of these things could improve. And this is regardless of what happens with their weight. And someone's weight could stay the same, it could come down. And if the weight does come down, it's not the cause for the improved health markers. It's something that's happened alongside it. And there is a real big difference between causation and correlation, and people need to be careful with making mistakes between the two of these. And Health at Every Size believes that BMI is a really poor indicator for health. You can have someone who has a very high BMI that would be diagnosed as overweight or obese despite being very fit. And BMI is a really crude measurement which should be looking at someone's body fat, but it doesn't actually do this particularly well. And the problem is, if you have a BMI where it's putting people into obese and overweight categories when they are actually healthy, and then you're making assumptions about what this weight really means, then it can mess up things. And to give you an example, I think it's from Paul Campos's The Obesity Myth. He talks about the fact that something like 70 or 80% of NFL players would be in the overweight or obese range. That Brad Pitt, when he was in Fight Club, so if you remember the film and how lean and tiny amounts of fat he had on him, he would be in the overweight category because of his weight. And if you're then making statistical determinations based on people falling into specific weight categories and what those weight categories mean, something like that can really mess with that data set. So our belief about what constitutes a healthy weight is way off. And if I step outside of the Health at Every Size movement and look at what obesity researchers normally say, they mostly agree that a healthy weight range should be much, much higher than what our society believes. And they have no problem with saying that you can be overweight and you can even be in the lower stages of being obese and be pretty healthy. And this isn't Health at Every Size saying this. This is a fairly general consensus among obesity researchers. And this would mean that huge amounts of the population who think that they need to lose weight for health reasons actually don't, based on these researchers. And unfortunately, this is a message that just is rarely publicized. It doesn't get out. And what I'll add is that the majority of people in my practice who come to see me who want to lose weight, yes, a lot of the time is about aesthetics, but a lot of the time they genuinely believe that they need to do it because it's healthier for them. And these are people who in no way need to lose weight for their health. People who are a size 10, people who are a size 12 or 14 or even a 16 who are saying, I need to lose weight to improve my health. And the fear of fat and the health problems it supposedly causes mean that people do really stupid things and really things that are damaging their health under the guise of trying to lose weight because weight loss is healthier. And Health at Every Size, as well as a lot of obesity researchers, are trying to rally against this line of thinking. So Health at Every Size also believes in the idea of a weight set point and the weight set point theory. And this is the idea that the body weight is largely outside our conscious control, and that it's pretty much at the control of our body. And that our weight will normally stay within a certain band, and that band is roughly about 10% of your body weight. You'll move up and down within that band, but to move out of that band is much more difficult. So within that 10% range, you can go up and down. Some people, it won't be 10%. It will be much less. But within that, there'll be daily and weekly fluctuations. But outside of that becomes much more difficult. But with people who are constantly dieting, what tends to happen is the body's weight set point starts to increase. So whereas before they might have thought, or the body might have thought, you know what, I'm happy to keep this person at 70 kilos or 140 pounds, and then they go on a diet, they lose a little bit of weight, and the body then increases the weight set point to add on another 3 or 4 pounds or 2 or 3 kilos. And you keep doing that over time, and the body's weight set point continues going up and up and up. And so unfortunately for a lot of people, their issues in terms of weight increasing is because of the dieting. And Health at Every Size believes that dieting is really the problem, and that deprivation and restriction is what causes issues not only for health, but in terms of increasing someone's weight. And that if we even look outside of health, the mental side of things and how demoralizing this can be, and people who feel like they're trying to do all the right things and following the advice and it just keeps backfiring on them, and over a period of 10, 15, 20 years, they put on a huge amount of weight even though they were trying to be good. And this pattern leads to a lot of poor eating and to comfort eating, even if it's only for a short while, because people get sick and tired and they throw in the towel and they think, why do I bother? And they eat poorly up until a point, and then they're like, no, I'm going to do better now. And it just repeats itself over and over again. So Health at Every Size also very much encourages mindfulness around eating, getting people to slow down and to enjoy their food, getting them away from the arbitrary rules and regulations, and finding the foods that work best for them and that they enjoy. And it does really suggest tackling things like emotional eating and binge eating as part of this, and seeing that food has often become someone's coping mechanism and how they can move away from that. And so much of this kind of thinking and what leads to someone doing this is because of a desire to control their weight. And what Health at Every Size wants to do is getting people away from that, trying to control their weight so much, and how important that is in someone's life, because it can then lead to all of those other behaviors becoming much easier to deal with, or them taking care of themselves. And I mean, too much of life is put on hold until someone is going to weigh the right amount, or too much of their precious time is used up and taken up trying to get to that perfect weight. And what Health at Every Size wants people to do is to be doing much more important things in their life and to be doing more important things in this world than trying to get the weight to some arbitrary number. And they also challenge the idea that you'll be healthier just because you lose weight. And how someone loses weight is incredibly important. If it happens because you're now following healthier habits, then this is good, and Health at Every Size would argue that maybe it's not so much to do with the weight and it's more to do with the habits. But if someone loses weight because they've cut their calories to 1,000 calories a day, or they're taking an amphetamine-based diet pill, then this weight loss doesn't equal more health, and it's going to lead to worse health. And unfortunately, because of the world we live in, so much of what is put out is that you just need to lose weight, and there's no explanation about what's healthy, what's good ways of doing this, what things you shouldn't do in your attempt to lose weight because it will cause more problems than it'll ever solve. It's just the mantra of you need to lose weight to be healthier, and Health at Every Size really challenges that. They also very much highlight a lot of the weight bias that we have all around us, and some of the stuff I was just talking about there. But doctors judging a thin person very differently to the way that they judge an overweight person. So two people coming into a doctor's office with the exact same symptoms, and the overweight person is lectured to about their weight, while the thin person gets none of this and gets much more investigation about what's going on. And that for a lot of people who are overweight, their diagnoses are being missed because too often it's just blamed on their weight. And it's like, if you just lose weight, everything will take care of itself and it'll be fine, when there is real issues going on that aren't related to their weight and that should be discovered. And that there's a very different tone and the way that people are spoken to, whether they're overweight or whether they're thin, and that doctors approach things very differently depending on whether someone's overweight and whether they're thin. And all of these things have been backed up by research, and that there is a real movement to change the way that doctors think about weight and interact with people because of a lot of the biases. And what this leads to is that people who are overweight stop going to see a doctor, because they're like, I just don't need another lecture about I need to eat more salad and lose weight. And people then miss the fact that they now have cancer, or they now have something more serious, because they avoided going and seeing that doctor because all they were going to get was another lecture. There's also a real bias and disconnect between what research shows and then what is presented in the media or by certain interest groups. And this is demonstrated in a lot of detail by Paul Campos in his book, The Obesity Myth. And he would show like a study, and the study would have certain findings, and then he would show what the interest group reported as part of the study. And they would get very creative with the statistics about what it showed, so they could keep with the party line of weight loss is really important and it's really healthy. And the problem is that interest group and what they're saying then gets picked up by the media, and then this just continues on and on and on. And so the message gets out that you need to continue to lose weight and it's important, and it's backed up by this study, even if that's nothing what the study had actually shown, or the study had shown something very, very minor that then gets blown well out of proportion for what is then presented. And this is definitely not just restricted with research about weight. The same thing happens with research about diets all the time. And it's amazing how often you'll read a sensationalized headline about some new study that shows low carb is best, or high protein diets triple your chance of heart disease, or vegetarian diet shown to be the healthiest diet for longevity, or whatever it may be. And you then look at the paper, and what is shown has nothing to do with what is then seen in that headline. All the people who were then doing that research were the Vegetarian Society, and it's amazing they've come to these conclusions that support their arguments. Or it's backed by people who have interest in coming to the conclusion that they've come to, even when the research doesn't show it. And biases about weight don't just happen with reporting for research. I mean, they happen in real life. There is real stigma around people being overweight or obese, and stereotypes about that people are lazy, that they lack willpower, that they don't care about their health. And these biases can affect someone not just in terms of everyday judgments of what people on the streets are saying, but in terms of not being able to get employment, or being discriminated in that way, and being discriminated in lots of different ways. And Health at Every Size is very much against this and trying to change the tide of what's going on. And they're definitely against things like fat shaming. And this isn't something that Health at Every Size just believes. It's believed by lots of people. And you can look at study after study after study that shows that it just doesn't help. It makes the situation worse. Making someone feel bad about their body size is just a very, very poor motivator for changing habits and for getting them to do something about it. And I want you to think about your everyday life. Imagine you wanted to pick up a new hobby, like playing tennis or playing the piano, and you go and get yourself a coach, or you get yourself someone to help you with that. And what they did for the time that you were having your lesson, they spent the whole time telling you how bad you were and how rubbish you are at whatever it may be, whether it be tennis or piano. You then open up the newspaper, and there are all these stories about how easy it is to play tennis, how easy it is to play the piano, and then anyone who doesn't get it just must be stupid. And you then go and play a game of tennis with your friend, and people are watching and laughing and pointing at you. Or you go to a piano recital and everyone hurls insults at you and tells you how easy it is, the piece that you're playing, and that any idiot could do that. And you may be the very lucky 1% of the people where this motivates them and they think, okay, right, I'm going to prove these people wrong. But for nearly everyone else, the response is, well, screw this, I'm not going to bother. And there are times when I am very blunt with clients. I will challenge what they are saying, the stories that they're creating, and ask them, like, is that really true? But this is worlds apart from shaming someone. And too often the rhetoric is that I'm trying to help this person and this is the stuff that they need to hear. And in actual fact, what they're doing is unloading all of their biases and just shaming this person, and it doesn't work at all. Obesity is a societal issue based on the environment that we've created. It's not just down to the individual. Cheap food, processed food, the kind of foods we have in schools, the diet industry. Continuing to blame the individual and say it's all about poor personal choices is just absurd. Like, to think that in the last 100 years, our population as a whole has collectively lost its sense of willpower. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. The environment that we live in is way more of a problem, and the government, food manufacturers, lobby groups, diet industry, pharmaceutical industry, fashion, all of these things need to be held accountable, and changes in these areas are what will lead to long-lasting change and make it happen. And if all we're focusing on is hurling abuse at the individual and saying, God, you need to take better care of yourself, I don't see any of this changing. And if anything, it's going to get worse. And Health at Every Size is definitely behind everything I've just said there, and I really believe and support them for that stuff. They also are real big advocates in exercise, but exercise where it's not just about helping someone lose weight, or it's not about weight loss at all. You can do and improve your health by doing exercise regardless of what happens with your weight. And they believe that exercise and movement are crucial to health, but for people to stop getting on the scale to work out, is the exercise really working for them? And too many people have this real poor association with exercise and don't do it because of this. So often it's the fact that they've done exercise lots of times in the past as a weight loss tool, and after repeated attempts and subsequently not losing any weight or putting on even more weight, then people see no reason for doing exercise. It becomes futile. It's like, what's the point? And Health at Every Size is encouraging people that you should be doing movement and you should be doing exercise, and that these things will help regardless of what happens on the scale. And that this exercise shouldn't be approached as this is something that's going to help me lose weight, but something that is fun. And that if people approach it as being something fun and something enjoyable, they're going to keep it up long term, they're going to do it more often, and they're going to get the health benefits from it. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I constantly say to clients, like, find things that you enjoy doing that if you discovered there was no health benefits from that exercise, you would keep it up because they enjoy it that much. And that's how they should approach it. Or find stuff that approach exercise like you're a kid, where as a kid you were doing all of these things that are exercise, but you never thought about them as exercise. And if you can be doing that, you're much more likely to keep it up, and you are going to get the health benefits from it regardless of what happens with weight. And really, you can be overweight or obese and be metabolically fit, just as you can be thin and be metabolically unfit. And this is the message they want to get across, and the reason why they're suggesting people do exercise and movement. And they do also very much challenge the idea that thinner is more attractive. And this is largely societal. And there are some basis within our inbuilt biological mechanisms of why certain features within men or women are important, and that stuff is hardwired in. But what we think of as attractive is largely based on what has been created and what we constantly see. And you just have to look around for other tribes and other areas around the world to see that that's the case. I mean, people having scars on their face, or stacking rings around their necks, or breaking feet so they're tiny and bound, etc. All of these were seen as beautiful, and they seem obscene when you mention them because it's not something that we as a society in the West really practice or think is attractive. But within these societies that do follow that, they do think it's very attractive, and it is very much based on what they've seen and what they've been brought up on. So that's pretty much Health at Every Size in a nutshell. I know I probably missed out certain things, but that's mostly what they're about. And I would say that it is something I really do support. So I now want to look at a couple of the issues I have with the movement. And the movement as a whole, you have lots of different people within it. So there are differing opinions. You have some people who are more relaxed around things, some people who are more militant. The same way with any even if I'm thinking of diet, if you think of the paleo movement, within that there are lots of different fractions and lots of people who are saying different things, even though it's under the banner of paleo. So there are certain people who have different approaches, even if it's under the banner of Health at Every Size. So some of these issues might not be the beliefs of everyone within the community, but it is against things that have been said under the banner of Health at Every Size. And I would add that a lot of these issues have been brought to my attention, or I've discovered through reading people like Yoni Friedhoff and Dr. David Katz, who are two people who work in the obesity field who I really respect. I also had a really great Skype chat with Ari Witten about the topic in preparation for putting together this show. And he's one of the first guests that I had on the show. He's a researcher that really knows his stuff, and he's always super supportive whenever I reach out to him. So I really want to thank Ari for his help. And it's not just the issues with Health at Every Size. I kind of told him about some of the things of why I really like it, and he was very much on board with that as well. So some of the issues. Health at Every Size, I really think, suffers because of its name. People say that you can't be healthy at every size and that this is backed up with research. And you can be overweight and mildly obese and still be healthy. When you're getting more than this in terms of weight, statistically, it doesn't look great. But what I would argue is for most cases, it's not the weight that the habits that leads to this weight. And so for me, I always argue that if someone is morbidly obese and someone says, well, how can that person be healthy? My response is, well, I don't think they can, but it's not because of the weight, it's because of their habits. But despite this, I do think that the name makes it an easy target for detractors. Some within the Health at Every Size community can be rather ostracizing of those who are attempting to lose weight. And there's this idea that if someone decides that they want to lose weight, they must be thinking that there's something wrong with them, that they want to make changes. And that if you look at the statistics around weight loss, they're so poor that someone shouldn't bother and that they're wasting their time, and really putting forward this idea that weight loss is almost an impossibility and that you should be saving your time and energy and not bothering with it. And personally, I think someone can believe in the Health at Every Size message and still want to lose weight, and that these two things aren't mutually exclusive. And unfortunately, I find that for some in the community, they don't support that way of thinking. And this can be ostracizing for people, and people feel like, well, I can't be part of that community because I do want to lose weight and I do think I'd have some health benefits from losing weight, and that might not be so great. The same thing can be said against fat shaming and then still supporting losing weight. Often it's talked about as if these things can't happen at the same time. You can't be a supporter of saying that there shouldn't be fat shaming and then at the same time thinking that people should be trying to lose weight to support their health. That these two things have to be totally separate, and you can be in one camp but not the other. And I definitely don't agree with this. Health at Every Size often says that there's no health benefits from losing weight, so it's not worth trying. And this is a grey area for me. And my sense is that when Health at Every Size says this, what they really mean is that weight loss within itself is not adding to health, but when it comes about because of healthy habits, then there are health benefits. But the benefits are because of the healthy lifestyle and not the weight itself. And if this is what's really meant, then I tend to agree. But because of the Health at Every Size message and how much it goes against what we've been told for so long, people are always on the lookout for easy things to attack against it. And when statements are made like losing weight has no health benefits, and this then isn't qualified with more information about what is really meant by this statement, then people jump on this and show study after study about people losing weight and it improving their health across a whole range of health markers. And so I think this is a different one, but I think because of the message they're putting across, they're almost held to a higher standard, and they have to be very careful with what they're saying. And sometimes it comes across that some of the things they say actually need to be qualified a little bit more or need to be put in a better context. And I would also add to this, part of this is also because Health at Every Size holds up research to a really high standard and holds up other researchers to a really high standard and complains about how much bias there is or why some research isn't true and picks it apart. And I think they're great at doing this and showing where there are flaws. But unfortunately, they also fall down by making a lot of the, or not a lot of, but some of the same errors that it complains about, where there is bias in terms of using research that supports their case, even if it's not the most structurally sound research, or using correlation saying something's causation when it's really correlation. And so I'll give a couple of examples. So Linda Bacon, in I don't know if it's just one article or it's been suggested a number of times, states that the average age of death has been increasing at the same time that our population has been getting heavier, and that if weight were such a problem, we wouldn't see this happening. Well, this is correlation, it's not causation. And this is what Health at Every Size really complain about other people doing. And the reason for our extended life could be to do with a whole range of reasons that have nothing to do with increased weight. Things like better drugs and medication, improvements in surgery, etc. And it could be that if it wasn't for the increased weight, we'd be living even longer. But the point is that while increased weight has happened at the same time as increased lifespan, one didn't necessarily cause the other. And there's nothing to support the fact that one caused the other. Another issue is looking at death rates and obesity. So Health at Every Size often states that if you look at death rates, those who are healthier living longer. And they will look at what someone weighed at the time of death and then state those who are living longer are typically heavier. But what this doesn't account for is someone's weight throughout their life. And this is important because a lot of illnesses lead to wasting and weight loss as they progress. And what someone weighs at the time of death, therefore, may not be a true reflection of what his or her weight was throughout their life or prior to getting that illness. So the research on this is much more grey than it's made out to be. And personally, I do think that as people get older, carrying around a little bit of extra weight is protective. And I think this is shown in research. But to make the comments that if you look at death rates and all of that, it's a lot more grey and is not as conclusive as is often made out. The final one is that Health at Every Size regularly states that 95% of diets fail. And while this may be true, you're lumping a lot of really stupid stuff into the category of diets. Like, there is lots of stuff that people do under the guise of dieting that nearly everyone would say is completely stupid to do and is going to lead to problems, etc. And there's a big difference between that and people doing much more sensible and sustainable things that aren't so extreme or limited in their focus. And the success rates with these kind of things can be much higher. And when you put every sort of dumb thing in the category of dieting to show why it doesn't work, again, it just makes it easier for people to attack this idea. So I don't disagree with the fact that losing weight, statistically, not very good for people. And on the whole, most people don't keep it up. But I would say on the whole, most people choose to do pretty silly stuff that is focusing purely on losing weight that has nothing to do with increasing health. And then when the weight goes back on, it's like, see, diets don't work. So I don't agree with the 95% figure and think it may be lower. But as I said, because of what Health at Every Size is delivering as a message and how contrary that is to everything else we've been told, it just makes it so much easier for people to attack the idea. So if I'm summing up, like when I'm asked about Health at Every Size, I say that I totally agree with the movement. I may not agree with everything that Linda Bacon says or what is promoted under the umbrella of Health at Every Size, but I agree wholeheartedly with its sentiment and what it's really about. And as I said earlier, I think it does suffer because of its name. Because in reality, you probably can't be healthy at every size. You can't be an adult who is skeletally thin and only weighs 70 pounds or 445 kilos and be healthy. You can't be 500 pounds or 250 kilos and be healthy. But for me, this is not what the movement's really about. It's about looking at someone's habits and their symptoms to determine if they are healthy, not just their weight. That if someone keeps healthy habits, they can be healthy. And if they keep unhealthy habits, they can be unhealthy regardless of what the number on the scale says. And this to me is something I completely support. Because in my line of work and with the people who come through my doors as clients, I see way too many aesthetically pleasing, healthy looking people who are anything but healthy. And I don't doubt that there are lots of people who are overweight and obese who get labeled as unhealthy when in fact they are in great health. And lots of people are maintaining a healthy weight, and I use the word healthy weight in inverted commas, but are doing it in unhealthy ways. And this means that they aren't really at a healthy weight. Because if the methods that you're doing to keep your body at a size 10 or a size 12 are negatively impacting on your health, how is this any different from someone who is overweight who's also keeping up bad habits? And the thinner person won't get the societal stigma of their larger counterparts, but in both cases, they're in poor health because of their habits. And at the end of the day, I believe we have influence over our weight. I don't believe we have control. We can listen to our body. We can do things that support its health. We can do regular movement and exercise and get proper sleep. But what happens at the end of all this is out of our control. You can have one person that does this and maintains a lean body. You can have someone else who does this and is on the heavier side. And I would add that the longer someone has been overweight, the more difficult it is for them to get down later on. And this is, say, someone who's been overweight for 50 years of their life. The likelihood of that person ever being able to get their body weight down to a low level or their fat down to a low level is really small. And this is regardless of whether they've been overweight because they've been keeping up lots of unhealthy habits, or they've been overweight and that's just how they are and how they've ever been. And this doesn't mean that they can't be healthy. It means that they can, and they can keep up healthy habits. But these healthy habits aren't going to instantly make that person lose weight. And the idea that that should happen needs to be challenged. So that is it for this week's show. I hope you've learned some stuff about the Health at Every Size movement. I hope that you've kind of got a bit of a better understanding, because sometimes you don't get the whole truth or the whole picture about what it's really about. On the whole, as I said, I totally believe in the ethos, and we should very much be focusing on healthy habits and lifestyle and not our weight. So have a great week. See you next time. Next time we're going to have a guest on the show, so see you then.
Thanks for listening to Real Health Radio. If you are interested in more details, you can find them at the 7 Health website. That's www.7health.com.